Have you ever considered the strange irony of our time? We can trace the age of the universe to within a fraction of a second. We manipulate the building blocks of life through CRISPR, and we simulate black hole collisions on supercomputers. And yet millions of people wake up every day feeling disconnected, anxious, lost. It's as though we've become experts at deciphering the laws of nature while remaining novices at understanding ourselves. This is not just a philosophical observation. It is a scientific problem. Because consciousness, while elusive, is not exempt from inquiry. And if we truly wish to evolve not just technologically, but meaningfully, we must confront a deeper question: are we advancing in the right direction? Consider this. The cosmos is expanding. Galaxies recede from each other at speeds proportional to their distance of discovery that earned Edwin Hubble his place in history. But there's another kind of expansion happening. Subtle, internal, psychological, a cognitive expansion. Human awareness, like space-time, appears to stretch towards something larger. Is this a spiritual idea? Not necessarily. It's a pattern. We know that in quantum physics, electrons don't move continuously from one energy state to another. They leap instantly, discontinuously, without passing through the in-between. This is a quantum leap. And while it describes a phenomenon in subatomic behavior, it also provides a potent metaphor for consciousness. What if there are thresholds and awareness levels of perception, comprehension, purpose that we don't climb toward but leap into? This is not mysticism. This is inference. This is hypothesis grounded in observation. The signs of such a shift are not found in crystals or horoscopes. They are subtle, yet measurably we learn to look in the right place. Just as we detect dark matter not by seeing it directly, but by observing its gravitational effects, we can detect shifts in awareness by the patterns they leave in behavior, decision-making, and the very structure of thought. Let me offer you a scientific lens through which to interpret these signs. Sign 1, the dissonance between environment and identity. You walk through daily life like an actor reading a script that no longer fits. The plot is predictable, the dialogue hollow. The characters around you seem to be improvising routines you've seen 1,000 times. This isn't depression. It's not boredom. It's a form of cognitive dissonance when the mental model you've constructed no longer aligns with the emerging complexity of your internal universe. In neuroscience, we call this predictive coding. Your brain is constantly comparing what it expects to what it experiences. When the gap becomes too wide, it signals a need for reconfiguration. And that need, that discomfort, it's not dysfunction. It's evolution demanding adaptation. Sign 2, a shift in values. You begin to question what once seemed normal. Accumulation, applause, algorithmic attention. Instead of chasing validation, you feel a gravitational pull toward meaning, clarity, and service. This too is not esoteric. It reflects a change in value-based decision frameworks. Studies in neuroeconomics show that as people age or awaken there, reward systems shift. The amygdala quiets. The prefrontal cortex lights up. Long-term thinking replaces short-term impulse. This shift in cognition mimics what happens in complex systems undergoing a phase transition, like ice melting into water. Same molecules, new properties, same person, new orientation. Sign 3, temporal perception begins to warp. Have you noticed how some moments stretch into eternity, while entire weeks disappear into a blur? This is not random. Einstein proved that time is relative to the observer. And it turns out, so is perceived time. In psychological terms, this is called chronoception, and it's deeply tied to attention, flow states, and emotional salience. When your brain reorganizes its focus around higher order, meaning time begins to follow different rhythms, the clock doesn't change, but your experience of time does, and that's a clue. Sign 4, an increased sense of empathic connection. You start to feel the suffering of others as your own, not metaphorically, but viscerally. This is not softness. It's sensitivity and neurological evolution of the mirror neuron system that allows mammals to socially model one another. But when this system matures, something greater emerges: identification beyond the self. You begin to see that the separation between me and you, I sat best convenient, at worst, delusional. In cosmology, we are made of star stuff. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the carbon in your cell salt, forged in supernovae. There is no us and them. There is only pattern, matter, consciousness reorganizing itself through temporary boundaries we call individuals. When you begin to feel that truth not as a theory, but as an experience, you're not losing touch with reality. You're gaining a new one. Sign 5, the emergence of vision without precedent. Sometimes in history, individuals begin to imagine futures that have no model in the past. They do not simply extrapolate from existing trends, they invent trajectories. In science, we call this a disruptive emergence, the sudden appearance of properties that were not predictable from earlier states. The same happens in the human mind. You begin to see not what is, but what could be, and not in vague daydreams, but in lucid configuration systems that are more fair, more intelligent, more aligned. This isn't fantasy. It's design potential. In evolutionary biology, there's a term, pre-adaptation. It refers to traits that seem unnecessary till a new environment arrives where they are critical. Perhaps that quiet optimism in you, the one that believes in a better world, isn't naive. It's pre-adaptive, a necessary trait for the environment humanity is about to enter. Sign 6, a sudden reordering of priorities. You may wake up one day and realize that your metrics have changed. Success no longer means income, approval, or status. It means coherence. Alignment between what you know, what you value, and how you live. This too is measurable. Functional MRI studies show that individuals who report higher life satisfaction display greater synchronization between the default mode network, self-referential thinking, and the executive control network, decision-making. In simpler terms, the brain becomes more harmonious when the person becomes more authentic. Coherence isn't spiritual jargon, it's a neurological state. And it's often the result of internal restructuring, a kind of neural realignment, where old stories collapse and new frameworks emerge from the rubble. Sign 7, the collapse of certainty. Ironically, one of the clearest signs of expanded awareness is the willingness to question everything, including your own conclusions. Certainty may feel safe, but in science, it's the enemy of discovery. The moment you believe you have all the answers, you stop asking better questions. And the universe-receiver expanding, ever evolving, does not reward intellectual complacency. If you find yourself more comfortable with mystery than dogma, more curious than convinced, then you are not losing control. You are gaining precision, because to grow in awareness is not to replace one belief with another. It is to replace belief with methodical wonder, a habit of testing, observing, revising. In this sense, a soul in transformation begins to think more like a scientist. Sign 8, a drive to contribute without recognition. Some of the most powerful forces in the cosmos are invisible. Gravity doesn't make a sound. Magnetism has no color, yet their effects shape galaxies and sustain life. In the same way, people undergoing a leap in awareness often begin to act from a different motivone that's not rooted in ego, but in impact, not in visibility, but in resonance. This is observable in both sociology and psychology. Prosocial behavior often increases as people experience meaning-based cognition. They start to organize their lives around service, not for applause, but for coherence with a deeper internal principle. When you quietly begin helping others, improving systems, healing pain not for reward, but because it feels necessary, then you're not just being nice. You're behaving like a gravitational field, shaping space without announcing yourself. Sign 9, the sense of standing at the edge of a threshold. In quantum theory, there's a moment before observation where a particle exists in all possible states simultaneously. This is called superposition. Then something changes, a measurement, an interaction, a choice, and the wave function collapses. Possibility becomes fact. You may be experiencing something like this not in a lab, but in your life. You sense multiple versions of yourself hovering in potential. One is safe, one is bold, one is awake, and one is still sleeping, but soon you will choose. That feeling of waiting is not passivity, it's calibration. Your brain, your values, your awareness, they're aligning with the version of you who remembers why you're here. And when you cross that threshold, it will not be by accident. It will be because everything in you was preparing for it. And so the question remains, if all these signs are observable enough in particles or planets, but in the structure of your own thoughts, behaviors, and aspirations, then what exactly are you becoming? Are you evolving? Yes. But this evolution is not measured in genes or limbs or tools. It's measured in awareness. You see, evolution doesn't stop with biology. Once a species achieves sentience once, it can reflect, imagine, question. Its next frontier is not physical. It's philosophical. From this moment forward, your survival depends not on strength, but on wisdom. Not on instincts, but on insight. Not on dominating others, but on mastering the self. And that, my friend, is where science meets soul. When you realize that your atoms were forged in dying stars, you start to take things more seriously. Not just your existence, but your responsibility. Because you are not a mistake. You are the consequence of 13.8 billion years of cosmic unfolding, of gravity sculpting galaxies, of DNA perfecting the improbable, of civilizations failing and learning and rising again. You are the latest version of the universe aware of itself. So what will you do with that awareness? This isn't a metaphysical riddle, it's a scientific challenge. Because consciousness is not just a state, it's a resource. And how you use it will shape not only your life, but the trajectory of humanity. Imagine this. A civilization doesn't collapse because its machines fail. It collapses because its thinking fails, because it forgets what it is, where it came from, and where it might be going. But imagine a different outcome. Imagine a species that refuses to stay asleep, that turns its gaze inward with the same intensity it once used to scan the stars, that builds not just technologies but ethics, not just weapons but wisdom, a species that learns to listen not just to data, but to the quiet signals inside, the longing for coherence, the pull of empathy, the gravity of purpose. That's not fantasy. That's physics plus awareness. That's what happens when a quantum leap doesn't happen in a lab, but in a mind. So here you are at the edge of that leap. There will be no fireworks, no spotlight. The universe rarely announces its breakthroughs with sound, but something is shifting in you, around you, through you, and maybe, just maybe, that shift is not waiting for permission. It's waiting for your participation. So choose clarity over comfort. Choose questions over assumptions. Choose contribution over recognition. Choose to act not because you're certain, but because you're awake. Because evolution doesn't reward the strongest or the fastest. It rewards the most responsive. And now, it's your turn to respond, to rise, to align, to leap. But what comes next, after the leap? This is where most people hesitate, as if awakening were the endpoint. But in the universe, nothing ends, it transforms. So too with awareness. The quantum leap is not the climax, it is the catalyst. Once you cross that invisible threshold, you don't just see differently, you become different. Your decisions begin to harmonize with forces that are larger than you but not separate from you. You begin to sense that your life, this one fragile, glorious emergence of molecules and memories, not a footnote in the cosmos. It's a line of code in its operating system. And what you think, what you choose, what you love it, matters. We often assume that scale defines significance. That because we are small, we must be irrelevant. But this is a fallacy. In physics, the smallest shifts create the largest effects. A quantum fluctuation at the birth of the universe seeded the galaxies. A genetic mutation reshaped species. A single idea forged in the brain of a sentient ape split the atom. So do not underestimate the power of a single conscious human being, especially one who has awakened to their responsibility, because in an age of noise, clarity is a revolution. In a society of apathy, attention is defiance. And in a world hurtling toward ecological and psychological entropy, coherence is courage. This is your moment to choose. Not just what you want to do, but who you are willing to become. Not someday. Now, because the future isn't waiting. It's listening. And you are not just a witness to this moment in time. You are its author. So write wisely, write bravely, write with the ink of stars and the grammar of truth. Because the universe is watching, and your leap year conscious leap is its next line.